It's a rare condition this day and age to come across any man in power who does not abuse the power that's bestowed upon them. It's as if there's a man in power, at some point he is going to abuse that power for selfish gain, whether it's through scammery, abuse, sexual misconduct, or all of the above. But recently, it seems like the men in power who are losing said power all happen to be black men. A few months ago, it was Shannon Sharp setting up an OnlyFans model for life due to his poor judgment and negligence. P. Diddy's court case and recent documentary has been the talk of social media for a while now. And just a few days ago, the now former head coach of the football team for the University of Michigan, Sherrone Moore, lost his entire life as he's known it for his own sexually deviant behavior. From sports to music to media, I'm noticing a pattern of black men losing the power they've acquired and taken in record time. And noticing these patterns of men and black men in positions of power abusing that power has left me with a few questions. Why are so many men unable to access power without abusing it? And why do we keep seeing black men in power fall to the same storyline, especially when a white woman is involved? And in this episode, I'm getting to the bottom of these questions and more. So, men in power abusing the power they're given. Okay, no, but can we talk about this one, y'all?
Oh, can we talk? Can we talk about it? Can we talk? Can we talk about it? Can we talk? Can we talk about it? Can we talk? Can we talk about it?
Hey y'all, it's your girl Cindy Noir, and welcome back to another episode of my show, The Cindy Noir Show. Now, before we get into today's topic, there are a few housekeeping things I want to get into, and there are some questions that I want to answer. The first question being, bitch, where the hell you been? I've been MIA for about a month and a half now, and I owe you all a sincere apology and an explanation. Long story short, y'all know I have ADHD. Well, I have been medicated, and things were running smoothly while I was medicated. But I ran into a financial rough patch and could no longer afford my medication for a little bit, and I suffered because of that tremendously. For about 2 months there, I was unmedicated, and as you could see, that was around the time I was MIA. Let me tell you, nothing has made it abundantly clear that I do in fact have ADHD quite like being unmedicated these last couple of months. Because when I tell you that I got nothing done, I mean that. There were many a time that I tried to flush out a podcast episode and I couldn't think straight enough to get the thoughts out to make an episode. It was a lot happening behind the scenes, y'all. And so that was the biggest reason. I have been too mentally unstable to sit my ass down and make an episode. But your girl is back medicated, so I'm back in front of you now. But in this downtime, I was also working behind the scenes on some other projects that will be announced in the future. So please know that this downtime wasn't all in vain. But I did want to apologize to you all and thank you for your support. I had a subscriber personally call me out in a loving, tough love way and say that this behavior being inconsistent is not how you maintain or grow a platform. And she was right. If you've been a long-time follower of my content and my podcast, then you know that I have struggled severely with being consistent. And that was a call out that I needed to hear. So with all that I've been working on behind the scenes, hopefully you all get to see a different level of consistency from me in the future. And this shouldn't happen again. So yeah, thank y'all for your patience and I apologize for the inconvenience. The second housekeeping thing I want to get into is a huge announcement. For the first time, my podcast show, The Cindy Noir Show, is being sponsored by my fellas over at Waving the Red Flag podcast for their card game, Is It a Red Flag? This is a fun card game to play with your friends and family at any get-together to discuss what you all believe to be is a red flag in dating or not. And as you can see, my card box is a little busted because I've been using it. How the card game works is you pick up a card, imagine it applies to somebody you're dating, say if it's a red flag and why, and discuss, and then the next person goes. And trust with the cards in this deck, y'all gonna be discussing and debating. It gets good and it gets juicy. And to give you all an example, I'm going to pick a random card from the deck and see what it says. We're gonna pick this one. This card says, if they put on a baby voice, is it a red flag? Yeah, because I'm not trying to hear that. This one was a more simpler example, but trust me when I say a lot of these questions will have you thinking and pondering and most importantly, debating. So if you would like your own Is It a Red Flag card game, then be sure to click the link in the bio of this podcast episode. And shout out again to my boys at Waving the Red Flag podcast. Thank you all for the sponsor. And lastly, before we hop into the topic, I'm sure you all are going to be asking, what are you crocheting, girl? And I am currently working on a customer's order for a popcorn beanie, and I'm making the beanie part of the popcorn beanie. So now that we've gotten everything out the way, let's hop into today's topic, shall we? On Wednesday, December 10th, University of Michigan's former head football coach Sherrone Moore was fired for alleged inappropriate conduct with his assistant. It appears that despite Mr. Moore being married to a white woman and having children with her, he was still thirsty for milk of magnesia and engaged in a full-fledged affair with a white woman he worked with, and that affair was very well known across campus. On this past Tuesday, after Moore's attempts to fire the assistant due to increased rumors of their affair, the assistant aired out the affair to the athletic director, ultimately resulting in Moore's firing. In response to the firing, Moore completely crashes out over that Caucasian coochie and breaks into the assistant's house and threatens to kill himself with a butter knife, saying that she ruined his life. These threats and breaking into her house led to the arrest of Moore, where he was later charged with third-degree home invasion, stalking, and breaking and entering. In one day, Sherrone Moore has gone from being gainfully employed and greedy with his ivory desires to unemployed, broke, and detained. Now, I'm not too big on college football, but what I am big on is mess. And so when the story dropped, please understand that I was sat for it, okay? Call me a messy bitch, but I love me a good messy affair. Ooh, it's just tantalizing. Anywho, let's be so clear. This was not just an affair. This was a choice. Honestly, it wasn't even a choice. It was a commitment, okay? Because since his arrest and all this has come out, we have learned more information. And apparently, it has come out that Mr. Moore has been accused of sliding into DMs of OnlyFans models, okay? And it has also come out that this was not the first time that the school has been made aware of their affair. Apparently, the school investigated their affair earlier in the year due to rumors spreading. And the athletic director said back then, if anybody can provide me with evidence of this affair, I will fire him on the spot, because it goes against Sherrone Moore's contract for him to be engaged in any kind of inappropriate conduct with an employee, especially a subordinate. But despite all the rumors, nobody came forward with any evidence. That is until Sherrone Moore tried to fire the assistant. Apparently, the rumors were still circulating, and the athletic director told Sherrone Moore, either she's fired or you're fired. And in response, Sherrone tried to fire her. And that is when she decided to go ahead and take matters into her own hands and air out the affair to the athletic director. And the rest is history. And as if all this isn't bad enough, I also found out that Sherrone Moore is the first black head coach of the football program for the University of Michigan ever. Mans was moving this reckless as the first black head coach of this program. Crazy work. And that's why I say this was more than a choice. This was a commitment to wrongdoing, because, sir, you are literally paving a way for those after you, and you acting like this? I mean, moving reckless as hell, because if it wasn't going to be the assistant to air him out, it could have easily been an OnlyFans model who he was DMing. So it's like, sir, what's really going on? And watching this entire scandal unfold and watching his fall from grace, if you even want to call it that, has me thinking about P. Diddy's documentary that just came out on Netflix. For those who don't know, even though I don't know how you wouldn't, 50 Cent produced a documentary about P. Diddy that details the reality of P. Diddy's rise to fame and power, as well as his fall from that pedestal he was put on. Now, I ain't gonna hold you. I have not watched the documentary, and quite frankly, I don't want to. And my reasonings for not wanting to watch are simple. For one, I don't like P. Diddy. I already knew he was a monster. I already knew he did it when it comes to Biggie. I know that. And so I just don't see the point in watching. For two, though, and my bigger reason is because when I watched the R. Kelly documentary, it was triggering for me. It was very jarring and stomach churning to watch, because I was a kid during R. Kelly's reign and had no idea just how bad he was. I knew he was bad, but I didn't know he was that bad. And for me, watching the R. Kelly documentary was so angering because it made me realize just how many adults were aware of how heinous he was as a man, yet they supported him anyway, yet they made fun of his victims anyway. And I just didn't like my eyes being open to that degree. And so with Diddy, I don't want to go through that again. I don't know. Plus, I don't trust 50 Cent's motives. I don't. 50 Cent ain't no saint. He isn't doing a good deed for the hell of it. I don't really trust 50. So it's just, I don't know. If you think I should watch the documentary though, comment below, let me know what you think, because people are saying I should. They want to hear my opinions on it, but I don't know. But the reason why Sherrone Moore's scandal is kind of reminding me of Diddy in this documentary is because, like Diddy, no one came forward to air Sherrone Moore out for his behavior. And now people are also asking, why didn't anyone share any evidence about Sherrone Moore? Why didn't anyone come forward outside the assistant? And the answer is simple. In a patriarchal society, when a man becomes the quintessential definition of what it means to be a patriarchal man, the power, the money, the fame, and the access to women, people around that man respect and protect his position, especially when that man is a black man. And it is very rare to see black men in these kind of positions. When it is a black man that is in power in this way, when it is a black man who is embodying what it means to be a patriarchal man in this way, people around these black men feel responsible to ensure that he maintains that position because of what he represents. Moore was the first black male head coach of that program. So people around him, despite probably having ample evidence, did not want to tarnish the credibility that he had built in being the first black head coach. Diddy became a black mogul in a way that we had never really seen before. Those around Diddy did not want to ruin that because of his misconduct. Oftentimes when men like this are in power and abusing that power, it takes the victims of that abusive power to come forward to air things out. It's not going to be the bystanders, and it's not going to be those who are witnessing the abuse, because they're wanting to protect and enable them to continue on in a position of power. And it's honestly pretty fucked up just how much these black men in power are able to get away with because of their blackness. The fact that they're able to hide behind the fact that they're a black man in a space that black men are rarely able to occupy, that is kind of sinister, because they end up in this really unique force field or shield of protection around for those around them, because they are guilted into not wanting to say anything because they don't want to ruin how monumental it is for a black man to be in that space. The people who are enabling these powerful men and looking the other way as they abuse that power are doing so to maintain the culture and to maintain the image, and are caring more about the image of these men in power than the actual men who are in power. Sherrone Moore was out here DMing OnlyFans models. A quick screenshot could have aired everything out with a swiftness. Sherrone Moore was out here hooking up with an assistant, despite his contract clearly saying not to do that. That man did not give a nary damn hell about the impact of his face being the head coach, yet people around him cared more. Same with Diddy. Diddy was out here throwing Diddy parties, kidnapping people, threatening people, and any and everything else in between. Yet everyone else around him felt the need to pick up his slack and protect his image more than he cared to do on his own. It's just interesting to me how when men in power embody what it means to be a patriarchal man, especially when it's black men, the people around these men in power will rally around that powerful man to insulate his wrongdoings, to protect him, to ensure that to the public, he maintains his patriarchal man image. And if I'm being honest, watching Sherrone Moore's scandal unfold does infuriate a part of me as a black woman watching it, because even though his life is falling apart now, Mans was doing this affair and acting in these nefarious ways for months, to our knowledge, unscathed. The athletic director said, if anyone can provide evidence, I will fire him right now, and nobody came forward. If Sherrone Moore was Cheryl Moore, a black woman married to a white man, she was another white man, you really think that there would still be no evidence to be shared? Would a black woman in the same powerful position of Sherrone Moore be shielded in the same way? I doubt it. Honestly, I feel like women in power in general are not afforded the same patriarchal protection that men in power are given. As women, we cannot afford to be in a powerful position and be loose with our coochie. We could never afford to be hooking up with a subordinate and get away with it for as long as men get away with it. There are so many nefarious acts that powerful men get to engage in whilst in power that a powerful woman could never do to the same degree. And it is infuriating to watch. Not saying that I want to be out here throwing it back for Jack and busting it wide for clout while I'm in a position of power. But it is frustrating to know that if I, as a black woman, were in a position of power to that degree, if I were the first black woman to be the head of anything in that degree, I have to move in a way that men don't have to. Even black men. That's frustrating. It is frustrating that if you are a woman in position of power, you have to think 2 to 3 steps ahead at all times, and to know that you could lose your position for doing a whole lot less reckless shit. So while yes, I'm glad that Sherrone Moore is getting the consequences of his actions now, it is frustrating to know that the school has known about this affair and have investigated it for months at this point, but no one came forward with any evidence. Whereas if Sherrone were a woman, evidence would have been provided. Not to mention, what is also frustrating to watch as a black woman is the amount of black men rallying behind Sherrone Moore in support. We shouldn't judge him. He going through a lot right now. Here comes Shannon Sharp talking about, I was in the same predicament 6 months ago, and if you ain't never been there before, you can't. Man, shut the hell up. He talking like what done happened to Sherrone Moore is out of his control and not completely Sherrone Moore's fault or Shannon Sharp's fault. Y'all got into the wrong kind of coochie, did shit you had no business doing, and are now suffering the consequences of your own actions. What are you here to support for real? It's odd seeing how many black men are refusing to hold him accountable or to call him out for his behavior. But let Sherrone have been Cheryl. Let Sherrone have been a black woman married to a white man cheating with another white man. The amount of bed wenches we would have heard. Oh my goodness. Y'all don't want to talk about race now with Sherrone Moore, but let Sherrone have been Cheryl. Y'all would have thrown the book at us. So it's just, not to get off topic, but it has been interesting to see the reactions in response to Sherrone Moore's scandal and his actions, things that he knowingly did that he knew was wrong. Where if the roles were reversed and it was a black woman, y'all would not have the same level of grace. Y'all would not have protected her as much. And y'all would have been seen to it that she got fired. Interesting. So let's get into the topic of men in power and the disproportionate consequences between white men abusing their power and black men abusing their power. Because putting race aside for a second, it is a common theme for men in power to abuse that power, period. So let's be very clear. Black men in power are not the only ones who are abusing that power. However, race comes into play when it comes to the consequences of men abusing their power. Very often is the pattern that when a white man is found out for abusing his power, he may lose that job, but he is able to find another job of the equivalent pay and power. It is a common experience that when a white man is outed for abusing his power, he either keeps the job and gets a slap on the wrist, or he loses that job but is able to secure a job of same importance, power, and pay. Very rarely do we see a white man completely lose everything and fall from grace entirely. They're usually able to bounce back pretty quickly and keep it pushing, despite committing the most heinous behaviors behind their power. Now, black men don't get that same privilege, and I use that word intentionally. When black men abuse their power, even if their abuse of power does not hold a candle to the way white men abuse their power, they lose it all. They lose the job, they lose the access, they lose the power, they lose the money, they lose the women, they lose everything. Not to mention, oftentimes when white men are outed for their abuse of power, it's not this huge public scandal usually. Usually it's kind of on the hush hush, or you hear about it here and there, but it is not hitting mainstream news. And if it is, it's not hitting mainstream news for a long time. The way we are about to hear about Sherrone Moore for the next few months, especially when the trial begins. Oh my goodness. When black men lose power in this way, it is public, it is loud, and they are paraded around through media for an extended amount of time. And when a black man loses power, he loses it permanently. You will often see white men lose their power, go incognito for a few years, and then bounce back, making bukus in a different position. When a black man loses that power, baby, it is gone. You do not see them bounce back to the same magnitude at all. And let me be very clear. Me highlighting these differences is not me saying that I want for black men to be able to bounce back in the same way. No. In fact, I want fairness in the opposite way. If you are a man in power and you abuse that power, no matter the color of your skin, you should not be able to bounce back, period. The equality should come in men not being able to maintain and regain the power they abused. Full stop. All men in power who abuse that power should be embarrassed and shamed for it publicly and never be able to access that kind of power again. Now, when it comes to Sherrone Moore, a lot of people are asking the question, is this an issue of lack of sexual discipline, or is it more than that? And I want to get into it. And the short answer is both. Yes, it is a lack of sexual discipline. However, it is also more that goes into why he behaved this way. But let's just hop into the phenomenon of lack of sexual discipline in men. When it comes to how men are socialized in the patriarchy, men are socialized to lack sexual discipline. They are not socialized to be disciplined when it comes to sex. They're socialized to be disciplined when it comes to their work ethic and health and fitness, if anything, but not sex. And when it comes to success, men and boys are socialized under a patriarchy to look at success to equal money, power, access, male approval, and access to women. Plural, not singular. Men are not socialized to look at their success as you make it big, you get the money, you get the power, and then you find one woman to marry and have kids with. That is success. No, they're not taught that. They are taught that marriage is a tool towards your success, but they are not taught to look at monogamy and loyalty and not cheating and such as the epitome of being successful. They are taught that to be a successful man is to have women at your beck and call whenever you want them, plural. When you look at how successful men are depicted in movies, in TV, and in music, they got the money, they got the cars, they got the jewelry, they got the clothes, and they have women all around them, plural. You don't see successful men being shown with a wedding ring on his wedding day. You don't see successful men being depicted as at home with the kids. He is out at the club surrounded by women. So there is a reoccurring image that to be a successful man under a patriarchy is to have your way with and have access to women. Men are taught that the more successful you are as a man, the more options you get with women, the more access you get to women, the more women want to be with you, and the more sex you can have because you have the means to provide. And this is where I think women miss the mark in not understanding why men can't be more sexually disciplined, because success for us doesn't pan out the same way. The more successful men become, the more their dating pool and options widen. Whereas for us, the more success we get when it comes to men, our dating pool shrinks and we become quote unquote less desirable to the male species. So it's a whole lot easier for us to tell the men folk, baby, put the tonic away and chill out when you're successful. Because for us, we're not having women knocking down our door trying to smash to the same degree. I think the only women who experience the dynamic of the more success they get, the more women that want them, are women who are in sports. And please understand, me discussing the ways that boys and men are socialized in the patriarchy to look at success is not me excusing the behavior at all, but it is me saying socialization plays a huge role, okay? And before any woman gets to disagreeing with me, hear me out. The same way that men and boys are socialized under a patriarchy to look at success in men and to embody that success in men is the exact same way that women are socialized under a patriarchy to look at and view marriage and motherhood and to embody those images. The same way we have women who are just desperate to have that Disney fairy tale life, the same way we have women who fall for the fairy tale of what it means to be married to a man because of TV and movies, the same way we were sold lies to through media, it's the same thing happening to men in a different way. And I think if we're going to talk about men lacking sexual discipline, we have to talk about where that's coming from. Society is saying that it is not manly for a man to be intentional with his tallywink. Society says to be a man, to be a patriarchal man, is to be reckless and loose with the tallywink. That is why Russell Wilson and Klay Thompson and men alike are clowned by other men. Because to these men have all the makings of what it means to be a successful patriarchal man, but they're not doing the success part right. A lot of these men feel like Russell Wilson and Klay Thompson should have treated Megan Thee Stallion and Sierra like the hoes they see them as, and for them to instead be loving and honoring and being loyal to these women, it is going against the program. A lot of these men feel like you got the fame, you got the money, you got the status, you have the access to women if you so choose. So why aren't you choosing that? Why are you going against the grain like this? This is not what it means to be a successful man. If I were in your shoes, I wouldn't do that. And yeah, I think that a lot of why we see successful men who are loyal and faithful and married being clowned is because that is not what men are programmed to look at success as. Another reason why men lack sexual discipline is because of the male ego and entitlement. I think with power comes an inflated sense of ego, of this belief that the rules don't apply to you. And I think with Black men who are in positions of power, that inflated ego is doubled in size. Because not only are you now looked at as a powerful man, but you are also looked at as a powerful Black man. And you are a powerful Black man in a demographic or in an area where there aren't many powerful Black men. When you are a powerful Black man in a room full of powerful white men, I think it's really easy for that shit to get to your head and for you to begin to embody the entitlement of white men and begin to feel as though the rules don't apply to you either. I think a lot of these Black men get into these spaces and begin to feel like they're above the law because they're surrounded by white men who move as if they are above the law, because for a lot of them, they kind of are. And when you let your ego get the best of you and have you believing that because you are this powerful man or powerful Black man in this space, you can do whatever you want, reckless behavior is sure to ensue. Especially when men are conditioned by the patriarchy to strive for that power. And because that power is romanticized to them as once you get the power, you get the money, you get the fame, you get the girls, these men get that power and then want to flaunt it and show it off because they've worked hard to be able to do just that. And I think that feeds into their lack of sexual discipline. Why did I work so hard to gain this power if I can't use it in the way that I've been taught that I should use it? If I've been taught that having all this power gets me as many women as I want, why would I let my marriage stop me from being able to wield that power to my benefit? If I've been taught that being the head of this department means that all my subordinates have to answer to me and want me, why wouldn't I take advantage of that access? And I think that's where the entitlement comes from. It comes from the fact that I have busted my ass and worked hard to get to this place to be able to have this power. And now that I'm here, you trying to tell me that I can't use it how I want to use it? Oh no, fuck that. I'm going to use it how I intend and how I want to. And you can't do anything about it because I'm him. And time again, we see men embody that flawed logic and fall flat on their face, especially black men. Now, let's get into the question of, does race play a factor with this Sherrone Moore scandal? And the answer is yes, but not in the way a lot of people are claiming it does. Anytime a black man gets caught up with a white woman, that results in him losing his career, his money, his fame, whatever the case may be, the black community loves to rise up and say the same thing. This is why you leave the white women alone. This is why you don't bother with them, because they're going to mess up your life. We keep trying to tell y'all to leave them white girls alone. Okay. I hear y'all. I do. However, I feel like this logic is flawed depending on when y'all use it. And I feel like sometimes y'all use this logic to absolve the black man of his role in a predicament. I really feel like too many black people infantilize black men through assuming that when he is caught up with the white woman, she was in full control and he was just under her spell and couldn't help it. And I don't like that, because that's not always the case, okay? People, let Emmett Till rest. Seriously, let him rest. Every black man that we hear that gets caught up with a white woman is not an Emmett Till situation, okay? These black men be whistling at these white women. It's not a lie every single time. All right? We have got to let these black men sit in their choices. Not every black man whose life is ruined through being with a white woman is a situation where she lied on him or where she played him. These men be welcoming the bullshit, and they need to be held accountable and sit in that on their own. I am not about to sit here and put all the blame on this white girl when she was a subordinate and he was the head coach. When she was younger and he was older. You want me to believe that a grown-ass head coach of a football program was just powerless to Caucasian coochie and just couldn't... Mind you, he married to Caucasian coochie. Come on, bro. He is responsible first and foremost, if not solely. Ain't no way around that. Because what we don't know is what was their dynamic. Was he taking advantage of her? Was he using his power to damn near force her to be with him? What was their dynamic? What if it comes out that their dynamic was very abusive? What if it comes out that she felt pressure to be with him because of his role and her role? So I'm not really a fan of the black community trying to make it seem like he was just helpless and hopeless and she was just this monster. Like, I'm not hearing that, okay? Now, despite my opinion on that, I still do believe that race does play a role, just not in that way. When it comes to Sherrone Moore, it is very clear to me that he has low racial self-esteem. That man does not like, nor is he proud of the fact that he is a black man. Before I get into this though, let me put a disclaimer out. When it comes to black men dating and marrying white women, I am biased. I have personally experienced prominent and important black men in my life put black women down in their pursuit of white women to be a black woman, and it did cause damage. So, I am very critical of black men pursuing white women. Don't get me wrong. I have seen black men with white women and it was clear that love was in the air. And that I have no issue with. However, in my experience, from what I have seen, a lot of black men who are with white women are not with them for the quote unquote right reasons. From what I have witnessed, what I have heard, and what I have seen, a lot of times it really does give low racial self-esteem. When this whole scandal came out initially, when I found out that Sherrone Moore was married to a white woman, I said, okay, I mean, it is Michigan. He could just, all right, cool. But what really solidified my theory that he had low racial self-esteem was learning that he was the first black head coach of University of Michigan's football program. That is what sealed the deal for me, because if he really valued his blackness and had pride in it, he would have moved a whole lot less reckless because he would have understood and revered the position he was given. He would have understood the magnitude of him being the first black male head coach. And he wouldn't have wanted to ruin it not only for himself, but for any future black head coaches of the program. And he would have gotten that. For him to move as reckless as to be DMing OnlyFans models, where they could easily screenshot and blow up his shit, for him to be as reckless as to be engaging in an affair with an employee, with a subordinate, despite his contract clearly saying don't do that shit, you do not value your own blackness enough. I do believe you could be a black person, married to somebody who is white, and have high racial self-esteem. I do think it's possible. The reason though why I think his marriage and his affair is indication of him not is because of how he is moving in being a black man. You are a black man coaching at a predominantly white institution. If you felt like if you were fully present in your blackness, you would move differently. Sherrone Moore was moving as if he were a black man trying to assimilate into white culture. He moved as if he were a black man doing his best to reject his blackness and cleave on to whiteness. He moved as if he were a man who believed that his proximity to white women and his proximity and position of power likened him as close to being a white man as he possibly could get. Quite frankly, the way that he speaks and the way that he moves gives, I don't see color, which is the wrong mentality to have given the position he was in, okay? I just feel like a black man who is in tune with his blackness and who is proud of his blackness is not going to move in a way that he could ruin his multi-million-dollar contract and the legacy of being the first black head coach in such a messy, obvious way. Black men have decades of examples of how getting caught up with a white woman can end everything for them. So why would you already be married to a white woman and have one at home and decide to shit where you eat with another one? Because now you're fired and facing charges and she still has her job. You know? And this is not me saying it should have been a black woman he cheated with. No, nigga, don't cheat, period. This is not me saying he should have married a black woman because had it been a black woman he married to, he wouldn't have cheated. Or, I'm not saying any of that. A man with this kind of character should be left in a cave by himself, period. But what I am saying is we can't negate the racial connotations here. Being the first black male head coach, they're waiting for you to fuck up. They're waiting. They're waiting for you to do the slightest thing. The athletic director said, if anyone can provide evidence, I will fire him on the spot. They were waiting for him to do something. And not only did you do something, but you do it with someone who historically is seen as forbidden fruit. Child, it just wasn't a smart move, and it just shows that you do not respect your race and your stance as a black man nearly enough to be able to move in that position the way you should be moving. And race also comes in because now he's facing charges. This man done broke into a white woman's house, threatened to kill himself and her. You think the judge ain't gonna come down on him extra hard now too on top of all of this? Come on. This is where race plays a role. I am not going to make the girl at fault. I am not going to say that this is her lying on him. No. He is completely responsible for his actions. However, race plays a role now when we're talking about the consequences and how hard it's gonna come down on him. And we're talking about how he sees himself and how he carries himself. It gives internalized anti-blackness. It gives internalized self-hatred. During his arraignment, it came forward that when he broke into her house, he said, I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to make you watch because this is all your fault. Saying it's your fault, you did this to me. And something about that quote to me was so bone chilling because I interpreted that phrase to mean that he wasn't talking about her per se, but what she represents. Assimilation. Him chasing after white acceptance and assimilation is what got him here now. That is how I interpreted what he said. I feel like his desperation to be seen as equal to white men is what landed him in this predicament. His need for white male validation through access of white women is what got him here. And it is that fault. I'm not saying it is her fault. I am saying that she symbolizes a deeper issue within him. And I think that he was projecting that onto her. But also, another reason on top of him having low racial self-esteem, I don't think homeboy like himself too much. And that ties into the internalized anti-blackness. There is a clear lack of self-love and self-respect here that needs to be unpacked too. And I would argue that a lot of men in power who engage in this behavior don't like nor respect themselves. And I would say for a lot of these men in power, the reason for lack of self-love and self-like is because of what all they had to do to acquire that power. A lot of them had to sell their souls, had to engage in really dehumanizing behavior, and had to do things that I don't think anyone would like about themselves if they had to do it. To be able to have that power. But beyond the internalized anti-blackness and clear self-hatred, I think that Sherrone Moore's sexual deviance also has a lot to do with a lack of self-love and self-respect. In fact, I feel like for a lot of men in general, lack of sexual discipline is synonymous with a lack of self-love and self-respect. You don't love or respect you enough. Because if you did, you would be a lot more intentional with who you give your body to. You would have a lot less of a desire to be so loose with your tallyway. I think that men are taught to outsource internal validation, love, and acceptance through sex. I think part of why men are socialized to be so sexually undisciplined is because they are not socialized to prioritize self-love and self-care and self-respect. I think a lot of men use sex as an attempt to fill voids only they can fill internally, and they are socialized to think that that is a good thing, and it's not. The way that men will hit anything and not even ask for your STI results is terrifying. The way you will ask a man for his STI results and he don't have them, but he out here knocking boots left and right. It's scary. It is very scary how much men are taught to devalue their bodies and themselves in pursuit of being sexually reckless. You don't like you. There's no way that you have gotten the blessing of being the first black head coach and you are DMing OnlyFans models. You are having full-fledged affairs on the clock, on the job, and you like and love yourself and respect yourself. Those two things aren't coexisting. There is no way you value yourself and respect yourself and are also being this sexually deviant. If I'm being honest, I pity Sherrone Moore. I do, because, sir, you are not well. You have a lot of internal issues and they are imploding in your face on the front page of every news outlet. We are all watching the destruction of your life that I think is rooted in a severe lack of self-love, self-respect, and anti-blackness and low racial self-esteem. You don't like you and you don't like your blackness. I would love to learn about his upbringing. Was he raised in predominantly white spaces? I wouldn't be surprised if he was, because this behavior just gives a certain level of disregard for who you are that gives the only black kid in a sea full of white kids. And I really hate that for him. And I wish he would have gotten therapy a long time ago, because he wouldn't be here now if he had. Sherrone Moore definitely gives the one black boy in a white frat. He's willing to let white men joke about his blackness and black women and other black people for what he thinks is access into white culture and white privilege. And it's sad. It's very sad to see his actions catch up to him in this way. And I feel like if he loved himself a little more, and if he had more pride and respect for his own blackness, he wouldn't be here. So, in conclusion, at the root of Sherrone Moore, at the root of Shannon Sharpe, at the root of P. Diddy's behaviors as black men in power positions abusing that power, I don't think it's about sex. I don't think it's about power. I don't even think it's solely about race. I think at the root of it all is severe, severe, severe lack of self-respect and self-love. I do. I believe that if society were more accustomed to socializing boys and men to loving and respecting themselves, they would move so much differently when it comes to how they go about the power they're given. I think that if men and boys were socialized to look at their positions of power and success to be more encompassing of their internal happiness and their internal self-respect and self-love, success would look very different for them. There's a reason why so many men who embody patriarchal success are unhappy in the end and who are lonely. And it's because the patriarchal term for success is unfulfilling after a while. And I would hasten to say the entire time is unfulfilling. It is not fulfilling for a lot of these men to have that access without connection. It is unfulfilling for a lot of these men to have that money and have that power without having a tightly knit connection to themselves and to others. A lot of these men are moving in these reckless ways from wounds and holes only they can fill and mend. And while it doesn't excuse their behavior and they deserve the consequences they're facing, it is sad to see and to know that if men were conditioned differently, if men were conditioned to value their own humanity first and foremost, a lot of these scandals would not happen. But that is what I have to say about today's topic. But now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the Sherrone Moore scandal? Do you feel like this was his fault? Do you think it was the assistant's fault? I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. And be sure to tell me if you think I should do an episode on the P. Diddy documentary. Since I have been MIA for about a month and a half, almost 2 months, if you all think that I should do an episode on the documentary, I will. It is the least I could do after all. But that is all I have for today's episode, and I have pretty much finished the beanie to the popcorn beanie. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next week. And in the meantime, y'all be blessed and bless up. Bye.